Hey guys, my name is Michael Westbrook. Thanks so much for checking out this video. If you haven't already, please like, subscribe, all that so you can see future content coming up. I'm going to be doing a few more of these where we compare the HX Stomp to the real thing. If you haven't seen it already, I did a comparison with my Samson era Matchless C30 to the matchstick models found on my HX Stomp. In that video, we kind of compare the tones, just to see how close they are. It's pretty impressive actually, so check that out if you haven't. Today we are going to compare the US Deluxe to an actual vintage Deluxe Reverb. In that we'll kind of just see how close they compare, all that. We'll talk about more when we get in. We're using the same cab IRs, trying to get them as close as we can, so stick around, hear how that sounds. First we're going to take a listen to what the HX Stomp model can do. Alright, so let's take a listen to the amp and the HX, see how they compare. I will say before we get started that I had a much harder time dialing this model in. The controls are very different than the amp. There's a mid control, there's a presence, a master, also like the drive. On the amp, there's just volume, bass, and treble. So there's a lot more variables in the HX on this to dial in. For me personally, I would have preferred to have kept it a little simpler and more like the amp. It just made it harder to dial in. I think the model sounds pretty different than this amp, but I've played a lot of Fender Deluxes and they all sound different too. The one specifically that I have is a 73 that's been blackface modded. I played it and another one a few years apart at the same exact time, and they sounded completely different. So, you know, just some more information for you that all Deluxes sound different. We're just comparing the one that I have with this model. It was tougher to get it dialed in, and I think in the end it doesn't sound quite as close to the amp as the Matchless did. But take a listen, see what you think. We're going to start out with a semi-dirty tone. You'll hear the amp first, and then we'll jump over to the HX. Now the HX. So you'll hear right away the amp just has it's a presence thing. It's not necessarily even a brightness thing. It just seems more forward to me. And I just have not been able to get the model to sound that forward without it sounding brighter. Let's tweak some of the sounds on the HX and I'll kind of show you what I'm talking about. I ended up with the mid all the way up. Just I felt like that helped it, but I wasn't able to get the same thing. When I bring up the presence, we get some brightness, but it's not it's not that forwardness that the amp has. Over to the amp. So there, I'm bringing up the treble. That does seem to help. I'm actually kind of liking that a little higher up, but I feel like I'm just chasing my tail with it. I turn up the treble, and then there's some brightness in the top end that I don't feel like the amp has, but it makes it sound more forward. We'll go back to the amp. We'll bring the presence down a little bit. See, there's some top end stuff there that I just don't. It's almost a chiminess that that comes through, which is nice, but it's not like the amp. So if you're looking for that, sound from a deluxe reverb, and you're not getting it, then the HX might be what you're looking for. But if you're used to a deluxe reverb and you swap over to the HX, I don't know. It's just not sounding similar. One other thing that I messed with was this input impedance. Trying to get some of that top end dial back. That seems to help some as you dip it down, but you lose something else too. Hey guys, a quick note here. I noticed when I was editing this video that as we turned down the input impedance, it did seem to get closer in feel and in vibe. It seemed to attenuate some of those highs. So that got me thinking, what is the input impedance on the amp? I got at the multimeter, I measured it, it's 1 meg. So I think technically the better comparison is to set the HX Stomp at 1 meg so that they're both the same. But sound-wise, it seems like we get closer when we turn that input impedance down. Let's get back to the video. right, so I've dialed in kind of a cleaner tone on the amp and on the HX Stomp. Let's see how they compare. So same thing with this, as we were hearing in the dirtier sounds, there's a sparkliness on this model that I can't get rid of with the HX amp as opposed to the actual amp. It's still nice. It still sounds great. Sometimes I would maybe want that high-end sparkle. The treble is pretty high up on the amp now, so I don't know that there's much more to get on the amp, and it's not kind of in the range that the HX is. The HX has this real top end, real high kind of sparkly thing going on, almost like a Vox or a Matchless would. Line 6 seems to do that type of sound really well. I think that's maybe why the Matchless model sounds so good, because that's kind of inherent in that amp as well. So let me know what you think. Again, this amp was a lot harder to dial in. I feel like I just kept going around in circles trying to get them to sound the same, with the controls not really being the same. They react very differently. The drive reacts differently. You know, Deluxes have this kind of classic American overdrive thing, and I think Line 6 definitely captured it. But they just react different. Both sound good, just, you know, different. All right, well, thanks for watching the video. Thanks for checking these comparisons out. There's more to come, and yeah, I'll see you out there.